The following clip is from the North to South Show, live every Monday and Wednesday at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, where we talk SEC football everything. Now, we'd love to have you out for next show, but for now, hit that like button down below, hit that subscribe button, and enjoy this clip. Let's hop in our time machine and let's actually travel to the future. We're not going to the past, we're going to the future, and I'm going to take you to the date and the setting of December 4th, 2021 in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, me and you or whatever, we've just parked our car in the parking garage and we're walking our way towards Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We don't know the two teams playing in the SEC Championship. That is obviously the event that we are going to be going towards. And let's pretend that Mercedes-Benz Stadium doesn't have some massive ads outside of it saying the two teams playing in it or whatever. You're not going to know those two teams that are playing in the SEC Championship until you enter Mercedes-Benz Stadium and actually watch it on the field. But for now, we're just walking to the stadium and we're trying to talk about this game. And if I were to ask you, without your knowledge of who's playing, what would be the biggest SEC game of the 2021 regular season that impacted the two teams going to the SEC Championship, what would you say? What would you say? And if this was me, if I had no clue who was playing and I was just walking towards the stadium and you would have asked me what game do I think in the 2021 SEC regular season mainly impacted this SEC Championship, I'd say it would be the Texas A&M Alabama game. Obviously, the game that we are about to talk about, because this, and not only in my opinion, in many people's opinion, is the biggest game in the SEC of the whole season. And let me tell you why we say this about this game, because first of all, let's talk about if Alabama wins. If Alabama wins, yes, things continue as normal. Alabama most likely goes on and wins the SEC West, all that stuff, and all that fun stuff. So it's normal. How could that be a big impact game if Alabama just does what they always do? Now, it's because the possibility of Texas A&M winning makes this such a big impact game, because no one else has the ability to beat Alabama like Texas A&M does this season. I'm not saying that Texas A&M is going to be favored by any stretch in this game going into it. Again, we're still in the preseason phase, still lots to be told about both of these teams, but Texas A&M has the best chance right now out of any team in all of college football in the regular season right now to beat Alabama this season. Postseason is a different question, but in the regular season right now, it's Texas A&M. Let's say Texas A&M does go out and wins this game. That not only shakes up the SEC West, it gives Texas A&M a huge advantage to go out and win the SEC West and make it to an SEC championship, and it opens a playoff spot for them. So with just that factor of talking about Texas A&M having the chance of beating Alabama this season and being talked about, this is the best team to have a shot against Alabama this season, it is usually going to be talked about as the biggest SEC game of the season because of that impact. You can make a strong argument for games like Alabama, Florida. You can make a strong argument for like Alabama, LSU. You can make an even stronger argument for a game like Georgia, Florida, because that's going to ultimately decide the East in many's opinion. But I think a lot of people will agree in saying that this is going to be the biggest game of the SEC season. And I think the experts or the TV host, obviously CBS, agrees with me, because on October 9th, CBS has already slotted a 3:30 and 8 o'clock primetime slot. Now, there are some good games that week. Like, let's not forget, you get Auburn, Georgia that week. What if they both go in undefeated? They could, unlikely, but they could snap that 8 o'clock spot. You have LSU, Kentucky, but basically it's because Alabama, Texas A&M is there that they are going to be put in the 8 o'clock spot. So let's talk about this game. Let's preview this game. Let's just talk about it, because I'm going to give my score prediction at the end, talk a little bit about how I feel about both teams going into this season, how they've done in the past against each other, and what we're going to be looking up to going into this game, and what are going to be some keys for mainly Texas A&M, because we know a lot about Alabama. So first off, let's talk about how both of these teams come into this game. Now, the schedule shakes out, I think, fairly well for both of these teams in the sense that you're going to most likely see both of these teams undefeated. We talk about Alabama first. Alabama starts off the season against Miami in Atlanta. That's going to be a decent game. Miami's not an easy win by any stretch. It's still a very winnable game. Then you go and play Mercer, I'm pretty sure. Then you got your big game against Florida in Florida, Gainesville. Probably the biggest game to start off the SEC, because the first game of the SEC is Missouri, Kentucky, week 2. This is probably going to be your first key matchup of the SEC season that you're going to see. Then you play Southern Miss, you get Ole Miss still, and then you finally go to Texas A&M to take on the Aggies. Texas A&M, on the other hand, I think they have a bit of an easier schedule. You start off with Kent State, you travel to Colorado, which we're talking about an environment and atmosphere standpoint. that's going to be a bit of a culture shock to them, not in the sense that Colorado is some crazy place that's impossible to win, but you're going to a highly elevated place, you're traveling a far distance, you're far away from home. Could be interesting and a good test for Texas A&M to see how this offense can travel on the road. New Mexico, you get after that. Then you got Arkansas, which is going to be played in Dallas, and then you're finishing up with Mississippi State before you play Alabama. So most likely both of these teams come into this game 5-0. I think Alabama probably has the best chance for a loss because I just think that you play guys like Ole Miss and Florida, you have a better chance of losing to them than Texas A&M does to your like Arkansas, your Mississippi States, your Colorados. But in all honesty, I don't see how these teams don't come in not undefeated into this game. So it's going to be a great, very, very good for marketing because you get to market that the whole couple weeks before that this is going to be the game of the year. You got two undefeateds going at it. They're both going to be high up in the rankings. You're going to have like at least top 8 matchup if they both stay undefeated. So we're going to be set up pretty good for this game. Now let's talk about the history of this rivalry. Not so much the late history. Now I could tell you that in 1968, back when Bear Bryant used to roam the sidelines for Alabama, Texas A&M actually beat them in the Cotton Bowl in 1968. Now, do you want to talk about that? Is that game relevant in this current point in time? No, it is not. It has no relevance, but I think that we could find some relevance and some points of interest and points of stats for coming into this game and talking about how, more importantly, Jimbo Fisher on Texas A&M has fared against Alabama. Alabama is on an 8-game winning streak right now. They haven't lost since Money Manziel came into Bryant-Denny Stadium and took them down. Obviously, that game was in 2012, the first time that Texas A&M and Alabama ever played each other. Well, Texas A&M was a part of the SEC. That was the first season that they started playing. Man, since then, it has just been a drought for Texas A&M. Obviously, Alabama winning 8 of the last 8, going 8 straight. And then, since Jimbo Fisher has got into Aggie land, they've gone 0-3 against Alabama. And in those 3 games, the most points that Texas A&M has put up against Alabama is 28. And the least amount that Alabama has scored is 45 points. So I think you could pick out a bit of a good margin there. That is 17 points that you're looking at on a difference from the least Alabama scored against Texas A&M to the most Texas A&M has scored against Alabama. Jimbo Fisher, it is going to be his task this year. If not a win, I think you got to at least make this game competitive. When you have pretty much a good chunk of your defense coming back, you have like 9 of 11 starters coming back, the defense is going to look good. Your offense is still charged, definitely one of the most talented offenses in all the SEC, a top-tier offense in college football pretty much. Top notch, I want to say, because top tier, you're talking like the best of the best. Top notch, you could group a bunch of different teams in there, and I'd say that Texas A&M is definitely in that spot. So Texas A&M is looking good this season. If not a win for Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher needs this to be a competitive game. At least going into the fourth quarter, there has to be some sense that Texas A&M still has a chance to win that game. And if Texas A&M just gets blown out like they have in years past and give up an early lead, like let's remember in the second quarter last season, they gave up 21 points. That cannot happen this year. How do I want to phrase this? The keys of the game is something that I've been doing in all these previews, talking about like, oh, what does this team need to do? What does, like give me an example. LSU versus Auburn. I was like, what does Auburn need to do to be able to beat LSU? Well, Auburn's going to have one receiver over 80 plus yards or something like that. Just little stuff like that, because I think for those teams, a team like that, a team that isn't that all complete, like a team like Auburn that isn't as well-rounded as Alabama, there is some sense of being able to pick out keys of the game and saying, like, this is where you need to attack if you're this team, this is where you can find points of success and all this stuff, and how you're able to beat this team. It's really, really tough to do that for Alabama in both sense, going against Alabama, because Alabama is so strong on both sides of the ball that it's hard to say, oh, Texas A&M just really has to attack Alabama's defensive line and really attack with them with the rushing game because Alabama's defensive line is weak. No, Alabama is strong on the defensive line. Alabama is strong at linebacker. They have the best linebacking core in the country, one of the best secondaries in all of college football, if not the best. You look at the offense, great offensive line, great wide receivers, great running back, great quarterback. So it's really, really hard to pick out, first of all, keys of the game for Alabama, because Alabama's Alabama. They just really got to go out and do what they do. That is pretty much a key for the game for them. And then Texas A&M, picking against them, it's hard. The only thing I'm going to say for keys of the game and how I'm going to attack this is, if you are a Texas A&M fan, and I'd love to hear from you guys, I always love hearing from you guys in the comments because we have such a diverse community of SEC fans. We got a bunch of different, like your Georgias, tons of Georgia fans, Florida, LSU, Alabama, South Carolina, Kentucky, Missouri. It keeps going on and on and on. We have fans across Arkansas, all different kinds of teams, and I love hearing from you guys, but this is more towards A&M fans. Let's say you guys do go into this game undefeated and all that stuff. In those first 5 games, do you currently see Haynes King being that guy that goes out and plays so solid that you are confident enough going into this game that Haynes King, you'd not rather have anyone else in the SEC than Haynes King at the quarterback position for Texas A&M? Because I think a lot rides on this game on Haynes King. I hate to say it because, yes, he's a freshman. Yes, it's tough to come into this situation where you're taking over the richest program or the most money-making program in Texas A&M over the span of the last 3 years or something like that. The richest program, one of the biggest program names in all of college football, taking the reins over there at quarterback just as a freshman, and you have all this expectation on you. And it's kind of immature to not talk about, hey, there's this kid over here named Bryce Young who he is a freshman as well. And yes, he's highly recruited and everything, but the experience isn't there. He didn't play any meaningful snaps for Alabama last year, but I still think Bryce Young is going to get his high game level experience in that Florida game early, which is something that I really want to point out. The culture shock or just the shock of this game, I don't think that it's going to be Alabama traveling into Texas A&M. Even though Texas A&M has amazing fans, that is an atmosphere that no one, or a stadium that no one wants to be playing in. It's just that Alabama has already faced that. It's not something new to them. It's been there, done that. If Bryce Young and that offense is able to go out and play well in Florida and really travel and put up a decent amount, like 40 plus points or something, that is easily translatable to what you're going to see in this Texas A&M game. The only question is, this Texas A&M offense has seen no Alabama defense yet, and that really relies on Haynes King for me. I know it's tough to say because, again, he's a freshman quarterback coming in. Don't want to put too much expectation, but to beat Alabama, you got to be able to throw the ball. I know Texas A&M has an amazing running back room. Isaiah Spiller, one of the greatest in all of college football right now. Devon Achane, one of the rising stars in all the SEC last season. He's looking really good. You could throw Nia Smith in there. I really like still calling him a running back, or like an all-purpose back, if that's what you want to call him. Looks like he's moved to wide receiver, so you could put him 50-50 in that running back room. You're not going to be able to run the ball the whole time against this linebacking core and this D-line. It's just not going to happen. This front seven is absolutely lethal, not something that you want to go against. Don't expect that you're going to rush for 200-plus yards in this game. So I think it's really going to have to come down to the passing game. Now, Alabama has a great secondary. As great as their linebackers are, as great as their D-line is, they still got the best secondary in all the SEC, in my opinion, and very, very reasonable argument to say that they're the best in all of college football. Malachi Moore, Josh Jobe, JaQuincy or Kool-Aid McKinstry, you got Jordan Battle. The names go on and on and on for talent you have in this secondary. You got to be able to attack them, because I believe in this new day and age of college football, as good of DBs that you're going to see, I see good DBs in LSU, I see good DBs in Alabama, I see decent ones out in Arkansas, even a team like that. I still think a better passing attack is always able to beat a good secondary. It's just the way that college football is working, because it's an offensive game. You'll see some of the best secondaries in all of college football. For instance, take Clemson last year, for example, one of so-called the best DB rooms in all the country, getting absolutely torched by Ohio State because they just had a better passing attack. Is Texas A&M going to have a better passing attack than Alabama's secondary this season? I think that's where the whole game comes down to. I like Texas A&M's wide receivers. I'll put that out there. I like Lane. I like Chapman. I like Weidermeyer. I like DMass. Those are all great players. DMass is going to become a huge deep ball threat for them this year. I really like Lane. I think he's going to be another guy to really look out for deep. I just don't think that this passing attack, I can say, is there yet. I know a lot of it rides on me not seeing this team play yet. I haven't seen Haynes King in any meaningful snaps yet against a big top opponent or something like that, and that's where I think the culture shock comes in, is really like, you're not going to see an Alabama secondary against a Mississippi State. You're not going to see an Alabama linebacking room against Colorado. You're not going to see an Alabama defensive front against Arkansas. And that's kind of where I start to lean towards Alabama right now. Before the season, in preseason, I'm starting to lean towards Alabama. If I had to put a spread on this game, and that spread cannot move, if let's say I'm a bookie and I'm putting a spread on this game that cannot change no matter what happens when the season actually starts, I'm putting this game at Alabama at 8.5. So it's basically, is Alabama going to be able to win by more than a touchdown, or is A&M going to hold them within a touchdown? I think that's still a win for Texas A&M if they hold them within a touchdown, because I think Alabama's a really good team this year. But 8.5, you don't go into that double-digit range. I think that it is disrespecting what Texas A&M team has this year if I put that spread in the double-digit range, especially in preseason when we haven't seen these two teams yet. Although I do think Alabama is going to be favored by more than a touchdown right now at this current moment and time. So score prediction for me in this game, I see Alabama score, like they're going to score the ball pretty much how they did last season. I mean, Texas A&M is coming back with a lot of the same defense, and I think they're going to get better. I'm excited to see what DeMarvin Leal's going to be able to do on that D-line. I'm excited to see what Peavy's going to be able to do on that D-line. They do lose a couple of guys. You look at like Buddy Johnson, you look at Bobby Brown, guys like that. Overall, I still think that Texas A&M secondary and everything is going to be good, but I still think that this Alabama offense just picks up right where they left off. Scoring isn't going to really change for Alabama. I have them sticking at 52, the same thing that they scored last season. Texas A&M put up 24 points last year. Give me 7 more than they had last season, so I'm going a final score of 52-31 for Alabama. I think it's going to be an amazing game. I think the storyline's going to be there. I think the hype's going to be around this game. It's really nice how the schedule worked out where it looks like both of these teams are going to be undefeated, and until I can clearly state and feel very confident in Haynes King again, I could say the same thing about Bryce Young. Really haven't seen Bryce Young play in any meaningful moments. I just think that he really has the talent around him that he doesn't need to go out and have some unbelievable game that I think Haynes King does need to be able to have for Texas A&M to come out with the win here. So I am going final score 52 for Alabama and 31 for Texas A&M.